Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network, presented to you by Bet365. My name is Michael Lieboff. Joining me for a brand new season of footy, the Taga soccer is back across the pond. My friends Anthony DeBundo and BJ Cunningham. Together, the three of us will break down the upcoming Premier League slate. We'll also talk a little La Liga, as that's and Ligue. BJ is back as well. So we'll talk a little bit about those two leagues. We'll save Bundesliga and Serie A for when they come back, of course. If you want to hear our big picture season previews, be sure to check those episodes out on this channel. We broke down the Premier League. These two gentlemen did a deep dive on the other big four leagues in Europe, and we did a point total draft with our friend Alon Shapiro from the FML FPL pod. You can listen to all those episodes on this channel. Be sure to do so before you can kind of get our general feel, hot or cold, on all 20 teams of the Premier League and beyond. But for this week, we're taking a much more immediate view, and that immediate view is going to be on match week 1, which gets underway Friday. Before we get into the slate, sink our teeth into it, just a reminder, Wondergoal is proudly presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer. Bet $1 on any game and get $200 in bonus bets. You must be 21 or older. The offer is available in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, and Iowa in the United States. And if you have a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. This is how this works if you're new here. We're going to go game by game, match by match in the Premier League. We'll give out any bets we like in those matches. And then at the end of the episode, we'll talk about our favorite bets for the upcoming Premier League slate, as well as our favorite underdogs. We'll wrap those into a 3-leg parlay. Those picks have to be plus 200 or longer to qualify for that section. Last year we hit 1. That sounds bad, but it was 201 to 1. So we ended up well in the black. And we're going to start with the big dog. We're going to start with Burnley. Welcome back. Friday afternoon, hosting the 3-time defending champions Man City at Turf Moor. Burnley's plus 750. Find higher numbers out there as well. City minus 334. The Jaws plus 500. Anthony, Vincent Kompany's Clarets. Welcome back, Burnley. What do you think?
Well, this is the first time since we started this podcast that I will not have a bet on the first match. You know, we all rode Brentford 2 years ago on opening day to a rousing victory at home against Arsenal, and then we all lost on Crystal Palace against
really
Arsenal.
A win.
Against the
XG was right bet.
The XG said we should have won.
Yeah, right bet City.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
BJ, you bet it too, so you can't even say anything. Anyway,
I'm saying yep.
We did actually see this matchup last year in the FA Cup. It did not go well for Burnley. Burnley couldn't really stop Man City at all in progressing the ball easily to the penalty area. It was 6-0 final in the quarterfinals. I know because I had the under. I thought that City would actually struggle to keep possession against Burnley in that matchup, and that Burnley could maybe be competitive there. They got outshot 20-6. City pretty much rolled, but this was City at the peak form. I don't think we saw City at their best on Sunday against Arsenal. Erling Haaland didn't register a shot. Now, I know last year's conversation, we did the same song and dance where everybody
We're not talking about the Community Shield as if it matters at all.
Arsenal's already got 2 trophies in their case, Michael.
Anyway, Erling Haaland didn't get a shot. So, City wasn't quite at their best. It is a tough spot to go on the road against a newly promoted team in the first day. But I think this number's about right. So I'm going to be sitting this one out.
I mean, you can't keep me away from a number this big in the first match of the season. So I'm in. I think you want to pick your spots against City when you're going to try to take them on. And that kind of goes for the other elite teams in the Premier League as well. And this is one of them. I mean, I know we probably said the same thing about them last year, and they had a tougher matchup against West Ham in that first match and took care of business pretty easily in a 2-0 win. And that was right after we had said that you don't want to go near the prices for Erling Haaland to win the Golden Boot. We'll see if he can if his game will translate. I think Anthony said that City will be worse with Haaland, and then he scored 2 goals in the first 62 minutes in the Premier League in his Premier League career.
I said that halfway through the season when they were, and they went on that run.
Yeah, and I the whole point here is not going to be numbers with this matchup. Like every number you're going to look at is going to tell you that City romps, but it's the first match back at Turf Moor. I think that it's almost like a rebirth for this club coming back to the Premier League with Vincent Kompany. It's a totally new identity for a team that did everything it could for a decade plus in their 2 stints in the Premier League that we all know this team from, right? Like their goal was simple, and it was fight tooth and nail, do whatever dark arts you needed to do to stay up. Well, that's not this ethos anymore, this team's ethos. So it does feel like a little bit of a rejuvenation for a club. Should be a party atmosphere at Turf Moor. It's not obviously not a lot of travel for City to go there, but it's not I wouldn't say it's an ideal spot for City to open a season where one team is going to be coming off of, like I said, coming into a party atmosphere. The other one is going to need to find its legs after winning a lot more important matches than the first match of the season in the summer against Burnley. So I think that extenuating circumstances here are enough for me to take a little nibble. You can get 9-1 on Burnley. I mean, it's more likely that City ends up winning, this one 3-0 in a snoozer on Friday afternoon. But if we do catch them like we did with that Brentford match, I mean, even those Palace matches, you can catch City here and there, and you want to pick your spots. And I think that first match of the season, the match before international breaks, or situations like that where you catch them in like sandwich spots with Champions League as well. Like these are the times you want to take on City. So I'll take the 9-1. And hopefully those first 12 minutes before City and Haaland go up 1-0 are fun for me. BJ, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Anthony that I'm passing on this one. If we can, if Burnley gets to plus 1.75, we can have a different conversation. But I need to see how this is going to work for Burnley in the Premier League. Anthony mentioned that FA Cup match where City just pounded them 6-0. Burnley was just so used to be able to dominate possession time and time again in the Championship. And then they have to go play Manchester City. And it's like, oh, crap, we can't control possession. And we're not really that great out of possession and defending for large stretches of the match. So, there were some nice additions from Burnley in the offseason. Trafford obviously coming over from Manchester City is a good addition. A goalkeeper, Bayer and O'Shea are good center backs, good ball progressors. But again, can Burnley do better than essentially what Fulham did last year? Because that's the conversation we're having. And Fulham did draw Liverpool on the opening day. So there is to be a conversation to be had that maybe they can do it. But I need to see it happen first before I decide to put my money down on Burnley.
Yeah, I mean, the case for Burnley is that underdogs have been historically profitable the first week of the season. And we're not really a trends podcast. We don't really do trends here, but match week 1 of underdogs of plus 200 or better since 2012. They only hit it a 24% rate, but that is good for if you bet $100 on every one, you'd be up $2,450. That was going into last season. And of course, last year we did have a couple upsets, including Brighton being the big one over Man United at 5-1. And, if you just hit one, it pays for pretty much the rest of the slate. So trying to figure out which underdog is the right one. This is one of the more intriguing ones to me, relatively, but overall, like if it gets up to 10-1, I'll probably fire on it. Just a small speculative wager to have the first bet, first game of the season, have some action. But in terms of, what we try to do here, I don't really have a ton on this match.
I will be interested to see where the market goes when we get closer to match time. If City gets steamed or if money comes in on Burnley, I'm very interested to see how people in the market rate these two
once
teams.
they see my bet come through.
I know, Michael.
Burnley's going to be 14-1.
Maybe as high as 9-1 out there. So
yeah.
Just talking about week 1. Like you said, Anthony, we saw that Brighton win over Manchester United. Then we saw a draw with Fulham and Liverpool. And then the other surprising result was Bournemouth at home against Villa. If you remember that one, Bournemouth scored like 90 seconds into that match.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They scored off of 2 step pieces.
Yeah, and then they scored late with Kiefer Moore. So you'll see some surprises. It's almost guaranteed you're going to see some surprises on in match week 1, which is, like I said, it's not really a thing about numbers here. It's hard to dive into numbers match week 1, especially after a summer like we've had with what just wasn't ordinary in terms of the transfer market, with the adventation of the Saudi Pro League as the 6th big club in Europe, basically, or 6th big league in Europe, basically. And there's still the Kyle Walker situation is still at large with City, as is Bernardo Silva. They're trying to hold on to them. So they were interested in Lucas Paqueta. Like there's a lot more odds and ends for City to tie up than Burnley. And Pep just is I don't think Pep, I mean, he's fussed about every detail of every match, but I don't think that this City's going to feel like their season is on the line on Friday should they drop 2 or more points. But for Burnley, it's a free shot. So I'll take the Clarets. And what's funny is I think all 3 of us are a little skeptical of Burnley's chances overall this season. We talked a lot about that on our season preview pods, is that the market love for this team and the momentum, the hype train around them is perhaps a little not out of control, but it's getting there. So I had Burnley circled as like a bet against team, but not in this situation. All right, so that's Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to now skip to what is the headliner on the slate. Sunday, it's an 11:30 a.m. kickoff between Chelsea and Liverpool at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea plus 190, Liverpool a favorite on the road plus 137, and the draw plus 240. You two on the same side, so I'll flip it over to you guys. BJ, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think the total is way too low here. Liverpool and Chelsea both are going to come into this season. Now, there's still some time here in the transfer market for things to happen. But Liverpool is just not going to have a defensive midfielder available other than maybe Curtis Jones, because it looks like Thiago is going to be out for this match. So what type of cover do they have in transition here? So that's the big problem for them going into this. And more and throughout the season, what Liverpool essentially is saying is they're just going to try to outscore everybody, because they go out and sign Szoboszlai, they sign McAllister, and they have just so much depth and attacking talent just everywhere. And I think Klopp, what he's relying on is all of these players just being elite at counter-pressing once they lose the ball. Because that's really what Liverpool is going to be trying to do. They're going to try to win the ball high, and they're going to try to catch teams out of position. Because once teams get in behind them, I mean, we talked about this at length last season, but teams just got at them in transition so many times. They allowed 1.34 expected goals per 90 minutes. That was 8th in the Premier League. Like, that's not good if you're going to be contending for the Champions League. They had one of the worst final third to box entry conversion rates allowed, which means they were bad once teams got into their final third. They were able to easily get in the penalty area. And for Chelsea, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Their philosophy is going to change a tad bit. Mauricio Pochettino comes in. Anthony knows this better than anybody. He wants to play on the front foot. He wants to be aggressive, wants to play attacking football. He wants his teams to press high. But Chelsea also is going into the season with just Enzo Fernandez and Conor Gallagher as their only 2 midfielders. So that's also a problem when you're trying to defend Liverpool. And I do expect Chelsea's offense to get much better with another year of Mudryk. It came out today that Nkunku is going to miss this match, but Nicholas Jackson has looked great in his preseason, so he should be fine at the number 9 position coming into this one. And they obviously still have Raheem Sterling, but goals projected for this match, I don't really see why the total is this low, considering this is probably going to be a very open end-to-end style match with 2 offenses that are going to be top 6, 7 in the Premier League this season. So I love over 2.5 goals at minus 130. If you want to chase a bigger price, maybe over 3 or over 3.5, it's definitely worth a sprinkle, because without these 2 teams having solidity in their defensive midfield positions, I mean, the transition opportunities are just going to be immense for both of these teams in this match.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance this kind of resembles a basketball match by the end. There's going to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of transition. Chelsea, you mentioned it, without the defensive midfield situation, They also have their two best attacking fullbacks available. And that was an underrated part of what went wrong for Chelsea last year, is that their fullbacks were never healthy. When they were healthy, they had got considerably more attacking production out of Reece James and Ben Chilwell, and they're both fit here. And Nkunku might be out till January. So the rumor was a torn MCL. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but that's a huge loss for Chelsea. Probably was going to be their second goal scoring option. So it's a big red flag for how good they're going to be. But yeah, Pochettino team, you expect more pressing, more chaotic. And remember when Pochettino first got to Spurs, they had a ton of pressing. And when they got broken open, they gave up a lot of big scoring chances. And that's pretty much what Liverpool is at this point too. At this current rate, this Liverpool team kind of reminds me of the early Klopp days when they had the elite front three of Mo, Mane, and Firmino, but they couldn't really defend. And it wasn't until they, got it Fabinho and Thiago and Van Dijk in there that they were able to reach that elite level. It kind of feels like Liverpool's got the similar vibe here with, they're playing the midfield of McAllister, Jones, and Szoboszlai. Like, they're going to be more athletic and more powerful and better at pressing, but they're also not going to have any ball winning. Curtis Jones is a forward first attacker or a midfielder. So is McAllister. So I think that there's some real holes defensively for both teams. Chelsea's attack can't be worse than it was last year. They'll have real tactics this year. And this has been the 0-0 derby. If you remember, the last 4 meetings have not had a goal, but it hasn't been for a lack of trying. I mean, the 2.6 XG in the last match at Chelsea, with Liverpool having a pretty reserve lineup for that game. The first meeting last year had over 2.5. It ended with 3 XG, and then both cup finals, it was a comedy of errors to lead to no goals in those games. Bad finishing, elite goalkeeping, all that. So this has been the 0-0 derby, but I agree this should be 3. So over 2.5, minus 130, 140. The market hasn't really moved on this Nkunku news either, which is interesting to me. I still like the over even with him out.
I think what you guys said kind of translates to what I will go into. I think before the match, if you made me pick a bet that has more value, I'd lean towards Chelsea just because they're home. I think these two teams I think Liverpool's the better team, big picture right now, but a lot of questions about both teams defensively and in the middle of the field. The thing I want to do for this match, though, it's Sunday 11:30 a.m. kickoff. It's a standalone match. I'm hoping you guys are right that the goals come early and often, because I think this is a great match to live bet. And even if that live bet is waiting for the first 15 minutes, and if it's still 0-0, then betting it over, because there should be like a pretty frenetic pace here. Not too sure how these defenses are going to fare in the first few weeks as Chelsea gets adjusted to a new manager and Liverpool tries to sort out its defensive flaws from a season ago. So it's a good live betting match, backing a team to come back and earn a late draw. I think that's also something we should touch on here, is that it's going to be fun to live bet these matches, in like the 84th minute or something, in like a 1-0 game.
Don't mention these
because
damn
of the
rules.
Way I'll put my hands up. I've always wanted time wasting to be punished, and now it's starting to be, but it's going to
cause so much more pain.
It's going to make for headaches. Oh my God.
We are an underdogs and unders podcast.
And now we got to,
and now they're going to add 10
now we
minutes
to survive 12 more minutes. Yep. Like, oh.
No, I mean, think about the Everton Bournemouth game. I mean, that there was, I had to watch and grit through that. And it felt like extra time was 28 minutes. It felt like.
What about last year? The very last match week of the season in the Bundesliga, Mainz 13-1 against Dortmund. That was a stoppage time one, Michael. This is what's going to happen to us all year long.
It's going to happen to us.
It's already happened. It happened to me at the World Cup with the
we've never had it go the other way, right? I've never won a bet on a 102nd minute.
Ivan Toney.
Anthony, I was kidding around.
Yeah, it only goes one way. Well, when you have the worst, we tend to bet the bad teams on this podcast. Yeah. We don't really like to bet the good teams. Yeah, and the good teams are more likely to score than the bad teams. So it doesn't go very well for us when the bad teams have to defend the good teams for an extra 5 to 10 minutes.
But I think this conversation kind of lends into what you guys are saying about the over. You're going to get an extra 10 minutes in this match, especially with Klopp. he gets whatever he wants from the fourth official. So this match could be 137 minutes long if Liverpool needs a goal, or it could be 91 minutes long if Chelsea needs the goal.
Yeah, one more thing, Michael. I want to just point out in this, and what this is something Liverpool did towards the end of last season, is obviously the big talking point is moving Trent Alexander-Arnold to the middle of the pitch. Well, Anthony also knows this, but Pochettino loves to utilize his fullbacks. And he made a great point about both Ben Chilwell and Reece James both being healthy. How is Liverpool going to defend in wide areas if they can't beat the first press? There's going to be nobody there. It's just going to be acres and acres of space. So like Anthony said, we got a nice basketball match coming up here to begin the season.
Saturday, 7 a.m. Eastern time. BJ, your Arsenal second favorites to win the title. Famously choked it away last year.
Yeah.
They're minus 500. Yeah. They are prohibitive favorites against Nottingham Forest. Their second season back up under Steve Cooper. Forest, the Tricky Trees are 11-1. The draw here, 6-1. Not anything too interesting here for me. BJ, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'm pretty much in line with my projection, right in what the market has, so I have no play for this match. But if you wanted to chase an Arsenal minus 2.5 or something like that, I mean, Nottingham Forest is going to be without Taiwo Awoniyi, which is obviously massive for them.
Yeah.
Their home road splits, let's just say, were quite bad last season. About a minus one XG differential away from home. Arsenal was one of the best teams at home last season. And I mean, this is just the conversation that I had with the title, is that Arsenal is going to have so much more game control and be able to break down these low blocks with the additions of Kai Havertz and Declan Rice. It allows so many guys to get up on that opponent's back line. So I don't take too much stock into the fact, obviously people are going to say, well, Nottingham Forest beat Arsenal towards the end of last season and their title hopes. I don't really put too much stock in that. I think this is an interesting spot for Arsenal coming off winning the Community Shield against City. Hopefully they can kind of stop the party and then put that behind them and really focus on this, because they did beat Nottingham Forest 5-0 last season at the Emirates. It really wasn't that competitive. So I think we could see something similar like that. Obviously Nottingham Forest is going to defend at a low block, but I'm telling you, Arsenal is going to be elite at breaking down low blocks this season. So if you want to chase a price on Arsenal, I don't hate taking them minus 2.5 or even minus 3.
Anthony, anything to add there before we move on to more compelling matches?
No, Awoniyi makes both teams to score no interesting. And I know that we made a killing betting team total overs against Arsenal last season, but this Nottingham Forest attack away from home last season was diabolical. They don't really have a great setup to press Arsenal here. I don't really think it's a great matchup for them on paper. And thus I would lean toward the BTTS no almost here, right around minus 110, but yeah, no bet for me.
All right, 10 a.m. Slate now. We'll start with Brighton minus 334 hosting newly promoted Luton Town. They're plus 850. The draw is plus 450. Anthony, right back to you. I think what you're about to make an argument for is the only thing I would think about here. Or perhaps getting in on the Seagulls live if things take a while to get going. But it seems like this should be one-way traffic.
Yeah, I like Brighton, and I'm laying the goal and a half here. This for me is closer to 1.8, 1.9. I'm surprised it's not 2. Luton Town, just projecting up their numbers from the championship, still makes them the worst team in this league. Brighton closed minus 1.25 against Wolves toward the end of last season, beat them 6-0. If you look at some of the market prices on what Brighton was closing in May, and now 3 months later, with a pretty net same roster here, why are they only minus 1.5 against Luton Town if Luton Town is priced as this worst team ever type stuff? And I think it's because the market is baking in some season-long regression for Brighton. I think it's very possible that we're a little wrong and we're a little too high on the Seagulls, and that maybe they are just the 6th or 7th best team. But at least right now, given that they got their business done pretty early in getting in, and they're going to get kudos later, but they've got their core guys fit and ready to go for the start of the season. I just think this number is short. And I think it's going to be a common thing where I'm going to be betting Brighton a lot early in the season and expecting that the market will catch on and eventually realize that the market is a little wrong. So I'm going to take positions on teams, and we're going to probably bet them a bunch early in the season. And just like last year, we bet Brighton the first couple matches. This year, I've already bet them this week against Luton Town -1.5 at home. And I bet them laying a half a goal at Wolves, who are a mess, next week as well. If you follow me in the app, I posted that on Tuesday. So I like Brighton here -1.5.
On to Everton and Fulham then. Toffees, baby.
Headliner.
We're back. The Marco Silva derby. Everton +110 at home at Goodison Park. Fulham +230. The draw is +260 here. It kind of lends into what you were just talking about, Anthony, about taking positions on teams. All three of us are fading Fulham early on. I think we would have felt a little bit better if their first match was not at Everton, a team that I think we're maybe a little bit more optimistic on as a podcast in the market, considering how they were a mess last year, but they should have a full season under Sean Dyche here, or excuse me, a full summer. They should be decent enough defensively, strong enough in the midfield. And guess what? Dominic Calvert-Lewin isn't hurt yet, which is a big deal. But the important thing here is that Everton's biggest weakness is their inability to score, and Fulham's biggest issue is their inability to prevent scoring chances. So this actually could be a decent matchup. I don't mind taking Everton here as a home favorite. I am an Everton fan, so you can say I'm looking at this match through some royal blue tinted glasses, but BJ, I felt relieved to see that. I think you probably bet Everton more than me last season.
I think I did.
Yeah, and
you know how much I love.
You're back on.
You know how much I love Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
No, I'm very interested to see, Michael, of what Everton looks like when they're not in a state of complete desperation, because that's what happened when Dyche took over. Is like they were in the relegation fight. They were incredibly desperate, so they played super, super aggressively. They tried to press high, and it did create a lot of high-scoring matches, and they ended up surviving relegation. But he'll obviously, I think, still press high, but maybe not with the reckless abandonment that he did towards the end of last season, which I think will create a much better structure for Everton, who, like we mentioned in our preview pod, they are solid in the middle of the pitch with Onana and Idrissa Gana Gueye and Alex Iwobi. That's a pretty solid midfield for a bottom half of the table club going up against an Everton that's, going against a Fulham team that's going to be without Paulinho. We should talk about the Alexander Mitrovic situation. As of today, he is still a Fulham player. He did come off the bench in their last friendly against Hoffenheim. He has been training with the team. I don't know if he's going to start in this match. I don't know, but from what I've read, it sounds like all signs are pointing to him playing this season. So that's obviously not good for Everton, but this is also a Fulham team that we talked about many times that is so overdue for a ton of negative aggression. They're going to be without Paulinho, who's their number one ball stopper in the middle of the pitch. Everton, you mentioned Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Being healthy is obviously huge because of what Sean Dyche wants to do. Everton doesn't really build out of the back. They like to send the ball long. They need a tall striker who's really good in the air that can hold up the ball and allow somebody like Danjuma, who's a really good guy at getting in behind defenses. It's going to create a good, nice striking partnership here. And Everton is pretty healthy going into this match when last season they did have to go through, a lot of those injuries. Fulham did beat Everton 3-1 at Goodison Park last season. Like towards the end, it was Sean Dyche was in charge. But it was a typical Fulham performance that they just scored on like their only 3 transitional opportunities. And that's, the XG won't bear that out. But Everton dominated that match for large stretches. And then, this just got caught with some variance. So I don't know what's going to happen with Mitrovic. He's obviously huge to this line, but I did project Everton at +101. So, best price I think you can find out there is +125 on the Toffees. I think it's a decent price in opening weekend with them being at home against a team that we're probably be fading quite a bit this season.
Yeah, keep an eye on James Tarkowski and
he's questionable.
Yeah, both questionable. But I just generally think the sentiment here is that we have a pretty good opinion on what we think Fulham is going to be, and I think that we know where Everton's floor likely is, and I think all of us are questioning whether their ceiling might be a little bit higher than uh, what most people think. So let's see if they can make good on that. Anthony, anything to add there before we move on? All right.
Everton plus 116. How good is Calvert-Lewin when he does play?
He just
That would be my
changes the
question.
team is what
Right.
it is.
It
You know,
certainly,
it's just like a stylist. It's more of a stylistic thing than anything, right? Like he's so good at a couple things that the team needs to play their system, right? Like
part of my thinking is that there just isn't anybody else either.
Well,
like
yeah, I mean, if the strikers when you're starting, Neil Maupay and others up top last season, who just again, like we know what Sean Dyche is. He wants to play the ball long. He wants to try to score off of set pieces. When you don't have good aerial threats, like that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Maupay
I think
is
that
about the exact opposite blend of a striker compared to Calvert-Lewin. I actually think the two of them as a partnership would work well. They just never been able to play because Maupay can kind of be the little mosquito fleet kind of guy and pick up the balls that Calvert-Lewin's winning down in the box. But he just changes the team. He makes this team makes everybody's life a lot simpler, which is pretty important when you're in a relegation fight, basically for 700 or close to 800 consecutive days, basically. Onto onto another team, another matchup where I think our preseason opinions on these two teams are at opposite ends of the spectrum. We all like Bournemouth. We think that the ceiling's pretty high for the Cherries compared to where they're priced in the market under Andoni Iraola, a former New York City Football Club legend. His Cherries in his debut plus 170 at home. West Ham plus 155. The draw is plus 240. So as high as we are on Bournemouth, we are pretty skeptical of West Ham, and that's saying something, especially for me. I've been pretty high on the Hammers the past 2 seasons that we've been doing this podcast, but without Declan Rice, like this team completely changes, and there's been nothing done. I know there's some talk today about some transfers in, but they're not going to no difference makers walking in that door for Saturday. I don't think that this team should be a road favorite against basically any team in the Premier League as it stands right now. Perhaps in like 6 weeks we have a different conversation as if they make some moves, but I'll take Bournemouth as a plus 170 home underdog here, and hope that the Andoni Iraola revolution gets off and running. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, West Ham have quietly had really poor road form for the better part of the last few years. They have the most losses in the last 2 seasons away from home of all teams who have not been relegated. So, they've been pretty poor away from home. They did get, looks like Edson Alvarez, but I don't think he's starting here. They're in for McTominay. They may lose Paqueta now because City wants to tap him up. Mikel Antonio is potentially benched for this match. So there's a lot of question marks about what West Ham looks like. But what they look like to me is a pretty mediocre midfield with no real ball progression engines and no real striker. And thus, Bournemouth trending up in the right direction, new manager coming in fresh. Whereas I think things are getting a little stale with David Moyes' side. I know they won the European trophy, but I think there's some real question marks about them. And there will be home spots to back West Ham for sure as an underdog, but don't have a huge gap between these two teams. Think that Bournemouth, you're buying as a slight home dog, basically pick them here. I like the Cherries.
Yeah, up the Cherries. BJ, anything here before we move on?
Yeah, so this is very interesting because I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think has gotten a little too short on Bournemouth. If you go back post World Cup break when Bournemouth really started to find their form, they were still a minus 14 expected goal differential. West Ham was minus 7. So the gap in terms of the underlying metrics last season from West Ham and Bournemouth were pretty large, and then now obviously for Bournemouth, changing systems from a passive low block into a high pressure, high intensity pressing team, that makes me a tad nervous if I'm somebody who's backing Bournemouth. But again, the other side of the coin is like Anthony said, West Ham's got no ball progressors. They have no press resistant guys that can play the ball through the middle of the pitch. So Bournemouth's pressure could very easily win out here. So I think it's a very interesting match that I'm just going to sit back and watch. I really want to see what Bournemouth looks like for one match before I decide to back them. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think BJ, you were the one who kind of said this over the summer that Bournemouth has some Brentford potential to them now. And I think that's a pretty good way to look at it, is that they could be a team that really gives a lot of teams that are better than them issues throughout the season and ends up finishing, in that mid-table and being the team that we dub the most pleasant surprise of the season. All right, another 10 a.m. kickoff. Last one we'll talk about here is Sheffield United. Welcome back. They are plus 187 at home against Crystal Palace, who are plus 140. The draw is plus 240. Palace kind of has a lot of similar traits to West Ham to me. A team that we all generally were high on going into last season for good reason. And then they had such an unfortunate, they lost the schedule lottery, which is hard to say when every team plays everybody home and away. But the way that their fixtures piled up, they ran that incredible gauntlet that they just had no chance of looking good or getting results out of, and it ends up costing Patrick Vieira's job, who we all thought was doing a pretty decent work with Palace, especially the season before last. And in comes Roy Hodgson. And as much as we liked Patrick Vieira as a manager and thought he was doing a good job, I mean, the smiles on our faces to welcome back Roy Hodgson it was such a peak, you can't script a Premier League moment. You can script the NFL all you want, Anthony. You can script it from Hard Knocks to the Super Bowl final play, but you cannot script the Premier League. Generally speaking, I think all of us are expecting Palace to have a bit of a rough go of it. Sheffield United, hard to kind of guesstimate where they're going to come out of the blocks. They automatic promotion, as BJ said, like they had a statistical profile that wasn't too far off of Burnley last championship season. And I think if Burnley was the team hosting Crystal Palace here, this number would almost be flipped or be much closer. So I like United. I think you could find them north of 2-1 around the market. I just want to take on Palace here. As Anthony said, it's a good week to back underdogs, especially at home. So give me the Blades at a decent price. I'm just going to try to beat Crystal Palace early on until the numbers start to tank a little bit. So yeah, another newly promoted side for me to bet here. 2 out of the 3 right out of the gates. BJ, you're going in a different direction here.
Yeah, I don't know how either team scores here, honestly, because Crystal Palace, we talked about it, towards the end of last season, they were really good when they had to play lesser competition. They had that great stretch run at the end of the season that they almost hit their point total. But against the bottom 8 offenses in the Premier League last season, Palace only allowed 0.94 expected goals per 90 minutes. Like, they were not a bad defensive team. They still have their center back partnership that's been together now. This is going to be year 3 with Anderson and Gahey. Czech Decore was one of the more underrated defensive midfielders in the Premier League last season, 97th percentile in terms of interceptions, 85th percentile in terms of tackles per 90. Really, really good, solid defensive option. Sheffield United, like Michael, they do have a good statistical profile, and they're a team that is good out of possession, doesn't need the ball, can play a 5-3-2, play 5 at the back. Offensively, let's go down the list here. They just sold Ndiaye to Marseille, who was 14 goals, 11 assists, 0.4 XG plus expected assists per 90-minute rate in the championship. He's gone. So now we move on. Oliver McBurney scored 13 goals. He's questionable to play in this match. Next leading goal scorer, James McAtee, scored 9 goals from the midfield position. He was on loan from Manchester City last season. They didn't make his transfer permanent. And then finally, Sander Berge. He's going to Burnley. He won't re-sign a new contract. So who does Sheffield United have left? Ryan Brewster, who was their big signing like 2 years ago. He's injured for this match too. I don't know how they score. I really honestly don't, unless it's off of some fluke set piece, because we all know Palace's struggles with corners. And Palace, I mean, Anthony hit the nail on the head in our preview pod, but Wilfred Zaha is gone to Galatasaray. 0.27 XG per 90 minutes scoring rate last season. That doesn't sound good, but that was the best Crystal Palace had. That's how bad they were offensively. Michael Elise is going to be injured for this match. He had 11 assists for them last season, was their best ball creator. So now you're just going to be relying on Edouard and Eze to be all of your offense here against a team that's going to play very, very compact. Gosh, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. So I like under 2.5 goals, minus 135. I'm also going to do the Michael Leboff special and take the 0-0 draw, which you can find at plus 750 at Bet365. Because I'm only projecting 1.87 goals here. And I really honestly, I really don't honestly know how either of these teams score. I really don't. It's like, it's just puzzling me as I'm going through this. So I'm just going to bet on a low event, which means you all should probably bet like over 4.5 goals at like 25-1. And this will probably end up being a thriller, but I really don't see it.
The 0-0 is
2.10 for me.
2.10. There you go.
The 0-0 is, we were talking about sweating the extended injury time. We're going to be betting, I would say by the end of the season's end, close to 12, 15 or so. I'll have 0-0 bets throughout, like not just the Premier League, but Champions League, etc. Those are going to be torture, just absolute torture for the millions and millions of people who bet 0-0s all the time. Good luck, BJ, with that. I think what you were saying kind of leads into why I like United here. I think that this match is a coin flip, and I'll take the home dog in that situation. Anthony, anything here? Blades, Eagles?
Under or nothing. I'm going to look into some under alts because the line is starting to move here. Under 1.5, under a half, I agree. I don't really see much attack here either, but you can get some weird results the first week of the season. But yeah, this is definitely an under for me or nothing.
All right, the 12:30 kickoff is Newcastle at home, minus 134, take on Aston Villa, plus 375. The draw is plus 260. Of course, these odds are from our friends at Bet365. One thing just generally is that, you look at the teams that have the standalone fixture time slots in this slate, the first of the season: City, Arsenal, Chelsea versus Liverpool. United gets the Monday Night Football spot, and then Spurs at 9 a.m. on Sunday, and then there's Newcastle. So it tells you where the league and the bean counters think Newcastle's going, because they're getting a prime spot here on match week 1. It would be Villa or nothing for me here, and this is simply because I think it's when you're betting match week 1, it's so much more pencil and paper handicapping than looking at numbers, because we just don't have a data set yet, and fluky things happen in match week 1. But I want to see where this price goes, because I think you might be able to get a little bit bigger as we get towards kickoff. And I just think Villa are good enough that the gap between that Newcastle being like the 3rd or 4th best team, and then Villa being like around 8th or 9th, it looks a little wide given the circumstances that it's the first week of the season. So I'll take a deep breath and just kind of focus on the other underdogs for now. But I'm sure by the time we kick off, I'll be in Villa, which I know is the opposite direction of where you're going, BJ.
Yeah, I think the price is kind of short here on Newcastle. Let's first talk about Villa. I kind of mentioned it on our point total draft, but Villa is in an interesting spot right now with the summer signings. They come in, they obviously bring in Pau Torres, Moussa Diaby, Yuri Tillemans, who all look like fantastic signings, and they are. But the system is going to have to change for Aston Villa, and you've seen that in their last 2 preseason matches before this one. Essentially, the gist of it is this, and the Tifo guys did a fantastic job breaking this down if you want to go watch that. But essentially, Pau Torres has always played as a left center back. Well, so is Tyrone Mings. Neither of them have ever played at right center back. So if you start Pau Torres, you obviously have great ball progressor, great passer from the left center back position, but he's not a great defender. He's not a great aerial defender. And that's something Tyrone Mings is absolutely elite at. He's 94th percentile in aerial duel win percentage, while Pau Torres is 32nd percentile. So what Unai Emery has done in his last two matches is he said, okay, I'm going to try to start three at the back, which he's never, ever done as a manager. He's going to play Konsa on the right, Pau Torres on the left, and Tyrone Mings in the center. Changing a system and being a predominantly build-up style team, going up against a team like Newcastle, how physical and how good they are with their pressing, top 5 in passes per defensive action and high turnovers last season. It's a really, really dangerous game to play. And, if you go back to last season, Villa did beat Newcastle 3-0, and it was a very impressive performance, but that was at Villa Park. Now you're coming to St. James Park, which is one of the most hostile environments in the Premier League, and Newcastle had the second best underlying metrics at home of only to City, plus 1.46 expected goal differential per 90 minutes. They just torched teams at St. James Park. So I like Newcastle here. I'm projecting them at minus 170. Villa is going to be without Jacob Ramsey and Alex Moreno, two very key players in their starting 11. I think it's a really bad spot here for Villa, changing a system, coming in, having to try to build up against a team that is good at pressing like Newcastle is. So give me Eddie Howe and the Magpies at minus 135.
Anthony, anything here before we turn the page to Sunday?
Yeah, I'm closer to BJ than you on this one. There is a lot of variance in week one, but higher than the market on Newcastle, lower than the market on Villa. The result of that means that I have this number higher. I agree on the matchup not being great. If you're able to play through it, they can generate a bunch against this Villa team, but overall, no interest.
All right, well, maybe you guys have talked me out of a bet on Villa. So
I don't know. Villa did kind of torch them at Villa Park. So
all right, maybe I'm back in
second half of the season.
Who knows? Yeah, we'll see. I think that this number is moving towards Newcastle regardless. So we'll wait to see.
Certainly, Newcastle was a team that saw a lot of market respect in the final hours leading up to kickoff last season. So if that repeats, then you'd be right.
Sunday, 9 a.m., Anthony's Super Bowl. His Twitter profile picture is a picture of him wearing a Brentford jersey. They're plus
holding
180.
up a Brentford jersey.
It looks like you're wearing it from afar.
Yeah, it's his second favorite team versus his third favorite team.
Yeah, exactly. If only we could have made this a three-way, title match for the belt between Liverpool, Brentford, and Spurs. Brentford plus 187, Spurs plus 137 on the road. The draw is plus 240. If you're a regular listener to this podcast, you probably saw this match and assumed that all three of us would be on the bees here as a home underdog against Spurs. But I think Spurs are a team. They're a play on team for me. I think that. Think about who's been managing this team for past 6 years or so. Since Pochettino left, right?
It's not 6 years. It's like 2.5, 3.
How long is it? It feels a lot longer than that.
Pochettino is
well, you know what? It's been like 6 managers and then
fall of 2020.
2020. There you go. So
or 2019.
Think about,
yeah,
whatever. It's been 4 years. Mourinho, Nuno, Conte, like
Ryan Mason
in and out. This team's been dealing with some very negative. I don't want to say
negative.
Like,
negative. Not like negative, like they hate the team and talk shit. Like negative tactics.
Yeah, pragmatic.
Yeah, just like we don't want the ball. You can have the ball. I'll tell you what. I watched the match today. Ange Ball had me real excited. Now,
I was trying to tell you.
Our defenders.
This is what this comes down to. Is Michael loves himself in Postecoglou.
And look, I love the tactics. I thought we kind of were cooking Barca for a while and like outpossessing Barcelona. It's kind of wild. Now the defense is super duper flawed, and that's going to be ultimately the main problem with the early stage of the Postecoglou era. I look to play the over, but it's a little juiced. I'm probably going to end up waiting and seeing, but if this gets to pick minus 110, I will be betting Tottenham because Brentford without Tony are not nearly as good. And this market's gotten a little crazy, BJ, for me. It has. Like
I know, it has.
We used to get Brentford plus a half, and they would get the draw, and you'd be like, yes, what a result. Or they pull the win, you'd be like, yes, brilliant. But now, like, they're barely even underdogs.
Yeah.
And I think the market's just gotten a little drunk on the bees. So I am Tottenham or nothing here. I think
I'm on Tottenham. I'm going to bet the Spurs money line.
Floors.
And I'm going to bet the Spurs money line. I think I might play split the unit on -1.5 as well. I could see. I'm telling you, man, just some positivity in this camp is going to do something for Spurs. And you think about the attacking talent they had, like, why when you're playing pragmatic, or as Anthony wants to call it, negative. I hate saying negative. Defense first approach to soccer.
Diabolical.
I
was talking to a friend of the pod, Brody Miller, about Tottenham today.
Oh gosh.
and we were both in agreement that, like, whether we win more or lose more, like, it's just gonna be way more fun.
It'll be a breath of fresh air.
I want to be entertained. I'm tired of, like, boring ass teams where Kane does a thing every once in a while, and that's like the only chance we have of scoring. So yeah, Tottenham, baby. We're back. We're playing our brand of footy. We're not going to win that much.
I disagree.
We're flawed, but
I think you'll be able to outscore your problem against most of the teams because that's the thing that people forget, that this team has so much attacking talent.
Yeah, Kane, Son, Madison, Richarlison, Kulusevski, like, they are loaded.
This is a team that should just go out there and storm.
It's almost like they're a team that's not built to play the way that Conte and Mourinho had made them play for the multiple seasons.
I'm glad you finally seen the light here. It took a weekend for me to get.
It took me watching like 45 minutes of the match today against Barcelona to be all the way back in.
But think about
the more that I've done, and I added some Tottenham plus 150 to finish above Chelsea with the Nkunku news and the Kane news, because I think it's pretty significant now. And, like, I think Tottenham's gonna have way more attacking firepower than Chelsea. Mm-hmm. But
bet them to win the league. Why not?
Our center backs today were still Davinson Sanchez and Eric Dyer for a team that wants to have the ball.
Well, Van de Ven's on his way in.
Yeah, and I'm look again. I think Tottenham is going to be a good buy team going forward, but I still have my question marks about the defense right now.
Man, where was this Anthony on the other side of the weekend when I was trying to say this Spurs team?
Well, I agreed that you're buying at the floor. I just
had to wait.
They have no ceiling as title.
You had to wait. They're not winning the title. You had to wait for Brody Miller to convince you. You couldn't just wait for your co-host here to explain that this is a team that made a great managerial hire. Think about Ange's Celtic team against City that first I'm sorry, not City, who's it, Real Madrid in the Champions League, that first match where they were just running rampant and then ended up losing because they hit 18 crossbars. God, what a night that was. Spurs. Anyways, so Anthony and I are on Tottenham here. I think Spurs are going to be a team you're going to want to back a lot out of the gates, and that never goes wrong. BJ, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if you follow me in the app, you probably know I've already bet Brentford, drawn a bet at plus 114. I agree with Anthony that the market's gotten a little drunk on Brentford here, and I think we might just get a straight pick 'em by the time this comes around. But I mean, listen, Brentford won 4 matches at home against the Big Six last season. They beat City, Tottenham, Liverpool, and United. Like, they're, outside of maybe Brighton, they're the best team against the Big Six. And listen, and this is something I find funny when I'm watching transfer market activity. Teams like Brentford and Brighton, they're no dummies. They know exactly when their players are. They know when people are going to have their players. They already got Raya's replacement in this window, Mark Flecken coming over from Freiburg, so it's not going to be that big of a loss for them. They signed Kevin Schade last season from Freiburg, who's a very kind of similar team to how Brentford plays. So Brentford just kind of keeps stealing all of their best players. He's a good, tall striker who's good on set pieces. And I mean, listen, like, I think that the buy opportunity on Tottenham is not this week. It's next week, Michael.
Oh, we'll be there.
Yep. I've already bet them
because they're hosting United. And
just because you're betting them next week, it doesn't mean you can't bet them this weekend too.
What I want to say here is that, okay, so Tottenham, they are going through this transition period, right?
Spurs
They're
are
going
going to
from
win this match 4-0. So if you want to bet them against United, get
high
them
pressing, high intensity, and like Anthony mentioned, their center back situation is a problem right now. Brentford is not the team you want to play when you're going through a transitional period from different styles and having bad center backs. Like they are.
You never want to play Brentford.
You never want to play Brentford.
You never want to play Brentford ever.
I mean, Tottenham is going
only want to play Everton. You just want to keep playing Everton over and over and over again.
Michael, Tottenham is going from a team that was 14th in passes per defensive action, 18th in high turnovers, and only held on average 50% possession last season to now this possession dominant build-up style where they're going to press teams high. It's going to take some time for them to get to that peak. And there will be great opportunities just like next week against United. But we don't go against Brentford. What are you guys doing? This is a perfect Brentford spot. I don't know what you guys are doing.
New slate, new season.
New season. I'm trying to throw out my priors.
We hate the bees.
Gosh, by the way, you guys are going to feel so dumb.
We love the cherries. We hate the bees.
Set piece in like the 17th minute.
It's fine. Tottenham will already be up 2 by then.
Yeah, they'll have 83 more minutes to score more.
Brentford money line. You guys talked me into it.
All right, Monday Night Football.
Awful match.
Let me tell you something.
United might win by 8. Or they'll lose.
I thought that immediately when this slate came out and whatever, I was like, I already can tell I'm just going to be like, I got nothing here. Like, do you guys have anything? But it's a Monday Night Football match. So I'll try my best to find a, derivative bet to maybe play or something. And then Wolves fired their manager today, Julian Lopetegui. And now I'm like, I got to bet Wolves. I think this number is going to fly towards United. Like, obviously, Gary O'Neill's going to come in. He's just going to put 10 people behind the ball. How does Wolves score? I've got no idea. I can't even fathom it in my own head. Maybe United passes it into their own goal or something. I don't know what it is.
Spain women's team type stuff right there.
Yeah.
But with the craziness of being week 1, you already fired your manager 4 or 5 days before this match, at least. Nobody's expecting your team to do anything well. Like, this is a trip to Old Trafford, the theater of dreams. How Premier League would it be? Just Wolves 1-0.
Didn't they beat United 2 years ago at Old Trafford?
I mean,
I think they did beat them 1-0, if I remember right.
This Wolves team stinks.
They do, but
they're so bad.
They stink.
Something.
I mean, why did he leave? He left because they were refusing to buy players.
Yeah.
I think the addition of Gary O'Neill might. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. It makes me.
It might
feel
be actually
better.
a net positive for them.
Think about what he did.
I don't know what positive is for Wolves at this point, but like,
it's staying up, and he did a good job keeping that team up.
Well, what they can finally do is stop.
That Bournemouth team had real players.
Yeah, they can stop being something they're not, which is they keep trying to be this like build up team out of the back who does like the short passing combination and tries to build through pressure and teams.
No.
And then, of course, we all know what happens when they get to the final third. And Gary O'Neill is going to come in and say, no, let's just sit in a 4-4-2 or a 4-5-1. And let's try to beat teams in transition. Why not, right? And they might not be able to do it, but at least they'll stop being something they're not.
So that's what I'm saying. Also, the change today was I'm fully on board with betting Wolves in the spot after the change.
I
especially if Gary O'Neill comes in, because it's not confirmed or anything yet as we're recording this on Tuesday night.
Yeah,
it seems like he's coming in, and he's gonna sit deep.
His only time for training is gonna just be go on, lads.
Yeah, but is it that hard to tell 10 guys to stay behind the ball against a team that had issues breaking that style down?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize, and thank you for pointing this out, because I hadn't looked at next week's slate yet, just because we've all been so busy with everything. I didn't realize Brighton was just sitting there at -110. So I just went and bet that as we were recording because that's just an insane number.
Yeah. Wolves tried defensive possession because it was their only way to really keep their defense afloat. Because they're not a good defense either.
No.
They just kept enough defensive possession and did nothing with it that they stalled the clock out and stayed up because they never conceded any goals. But like they were a below average defense too. They were bottom 7 defense.
Can you get a new manager,
Anthony, we should
before season starts?
No, I've officially decided that's out.
We should also take a victory lap on Jose Sa because he was terrible last season, and he had that unreal shot stopping season the season before where they finished 10th, and he just turned into a pumpkin. So
Well,
there's really no hope for Wolves right now.
that sounds like you guys are just trying to get me to bet them again and again and again. I'm all in on Wolves in this spot because like
How high are they going to get by match time?
oh, it's going to be a big number.
I don't think they're going to get that much higher.
You don't think?
You don't think so?
They're 8-1 right now. Would you rather take Wolves on the road against United or Burnley at home against City?
I'd rather take Burnley.
Burnley, absolutely take Burnley.
Burnley 100%.
Yep.
And I think that there's still room for this number to grow.
Yeah, if we get 12, maybe. We might. I don't know.
We're not getting 12.
No, I think we could get 10 though.
Fabio Silva brace.
Yeah. I mean, it's
just one transitional opportunity, win the match 1-0. Final XG is like United 3.2 to Wolves 0.3. Win a nice little variance. Kick off the season. Who knows?
Exactly. So I'll be betting Wolves.
Really inspiring handicap from us there.
How can you handicap a match like that?
There's no way.
There's nothing you can do.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's United are a much better team on much better footing. That Wolves stink. But how does a team react to their manager basically begging to be fired and finally getting fired? Like it was public what was going on. So
I don't think that's good. Also, they were good they were quote good.
They won matches. Yeah,
they won match, but that matters. The psychological impact. They were luck boxing it, but they were winning.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, look, it's going to be a huge number, and I think it's. I'm going to play it because I want to see how this team reacts, and I'm in for the ride. I'm not saying it's a terrific bet. I'm just totally in for the ride here. For a small bet on Gary O'Neill's Wolves. All right. La Liga. BJ. La Liga is back.
It is back.
You guys talked about La Liga, Ligue, Serie A, and the Bundesliga in that preview pod. So much talk about it. Our boy Diego Simeone.
Have you listened yet?
I've been catching up. I've been doing. I
kind of slant. I mentioned how you're definitely going to bet the Champions League this year at Leti. I will book that ticket this year. I decided.
I mean, they should be the second favorites behind City, as they should every year. BJ, what's your favorite bet in La Liga this weekend?
Yeah, not really a team I typically bet in La Liga, but I think the price is too high. I like Real Betis +0.5. +110 against Villarreal. And me and Anthony talked about this on the preview pod, but Villarreal, I mean, they got raided completely. They lost Pau Torres, their best center back, Nicolas Jackson, their best offensive threat, Chukwueze off to AC Milan, Lo Celso, their best midfielder off, and they've really only brought in Sorloth over from Sociedad. So now you're looking at Real Betis that, they had a decent summer. They made the middle of the pitch a little deeper, signing Mark Roca from Leeds. They signed Isco as a free agent. Mark Bartra is coming back from Turkey to play center back. So a decent summer for Real Betis. They did overperform at both ends of the pitch last season, but they still had better defensive numbers than Villarreal. So you have a Villarreal team that under Quique Setien averaged 1.74 XG per 90 minutes. That's going to get significantly downgraded with the amount of attacking talent they lost offensively. Plus, looks like Juan Foyth, their star right back, is going to miss this match as well due to injury. So it's just kind of too high of a price here on Villarreal. They're sitting around -145, -150. So I only have them projected at +106. So I'll take Real Betis +0.5 at +110.
I'm going to take our boys from Bilbao. They finished 8th last season at Athletic Club Bilbao. But if you look at their expected goals numbers, they should have been challenging for a Champions League spot. One of the better defensive clubs in all of Europe. Underperformed both in terms of goals allowed compared to their expected goals allowed and goals scored compared to their expected goals for. A team that we just love to bet. You love to bet them, especially as underdogs, and that's exactly what they are against Real Madrid. Coming out of the gates, the Karim Benzema era is over. We'll see how Madrid kind of. I guess it's fair to call this a transition year for Madrid. I think it's just good value, plus 240 on Los Leones. Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I like Real Betis and I like Bilbao. We're going to be a lot of agreement in La Liga this weekend, but I'm going to start it on Friday with Sevilla and Valencia. Both teams to score yes at minus 105. BJ is cringing somewhere.
Has there ever been a La Liga match where both teams scored in the same game?
No, in the history of the league, there's only been a couple, and I'm hoping that we get one more this weekend. Valencia, I'm still down on the Sevilla defense. I think that the changes they made in the second half of the season, once Lopetegui was out, they finally found managerial situation that worked for them. They clearly got better in attack, and I think Valencia is pretty passive to the point where they're going to get enough time on the ball, Sevilla, to get their crosses in to be effective going forward. Valencia's attack, one of the worst and unluckiest in all of Europe last year, ran so ungodly cold, but had pretty good process numbers in terms of box entries and progressive passes, to the point where I'm still just like higher than the market than on the Valencia attack. So give me both teams to score. Two fun play styles. First match of the first day of the season. Going to be a sweat the whole way, but I like it.
It's a fun way to start off the La Liga.
I really hope that teams don't start scoring in La Liga, or else I might be broke, Michael.
Don't worry. Just Sevilla.
And are you going with the? Are you going the other way? Are you going BTTSN? No.
Gosh, no.
All right. What about Ligue? BJ, you're the only one with a play in France.
Yeah, I like Leon Pickham minus 115 on the road at Strasbourg.
Oh boy,
Strasbourg. They're going to be
team.
They're going to be one of the more interesting teams this season because of who owns them now, which is Chelsea. I feel like every single day I just see something on Twitter that Chelsea has signed some Brazilian talent for 20 million. He's going to go on loan to Strasbourg. So they could turn out to be a good team eventually, but this is match week 1. All those players aren't there yet. They were a massive disappointment last season. I think, if we go back to our preview pod last season, I was touting them at in terms of, to finish inside the top 3 after a great second season off of promotion. But they were really, really bad defensively, finished allowing 1.5 expected goals per 90 minutes. Patrick Vieira is now their manager.
Damn right.
So you expect more intense pressing going forward, not a lot of defensive solidity. Lyon was a top 5 team at playing through pressure last season in France, and a team that really got a lot better post World Cup. They brought in Laurent Blanc, if you remember him, obviously from the French national team and PSG for a long time. Post World Cup, Lyon had the 4th best expected goal differential in the Ligue 1, around plus 0.55 per 90. And the biggest thing is this summer, they have kept all of their great players. Ryan Cherki is still there, dynamic young midfielder. Lacazette bagged 27 goals last season. Lukeba is going to stay at the club, despite interest coming from Chelsea and elsewhere as their best center back. But Lyon's the more talented team. They're good at playing through pressure with the Strasbourg team, playing under their first match under Patrick Vieira. I think it's a little too short of a price for a team that was a top 5 team in France over the second half of the season. So I like Lyon draw no bet at minus 115.
I'm telling you, Strasbourg's going to be decent this year.
They are.
I think, it's like a post-hype year. We hyped them last year. We were wrong. They sucked. Now everybody's out on Strasbourg. I'm still in. I like Vieira. You mentioned the kind of influx of talent. Like, there's reasons to be optimistic about them being mid-table, and thus I think the market's about right here. But if you made me bet it, I would disagree with BJ, just because I think there's a lot of upward mobility for the Strasbourg team. I think we kind of know what Lyon is, but they're still flawed. Both teams very flawed defensively, so it should be a fun match.
300 to 1, Strasbourg to win legal. Sounds like.
Yeah, I would not go that far.
Sounds like
we have a bet for you, Michael. By the way,
we do have a bet for you. This is going to be a grouper. So if you missed the rest of Europe pod, Lille 35 to 1, to win Ligue 1 with everything going on at PSG is the play.
Parlay that with the Brisbane Lions to win the Aussie Football League and maybe the Islanders to win the Stanley Cup, and I can be interested.
Gael Monfils to win the US Open.
On that note, we'll flip it to our favorite part of the program. Every week, we will give you a 3-leg underdog parlay. Like I said, every team has to be plus 200 or longer to qualify. Oftentimes, they are much bigger prices than that. As we've said, we've hit one. It was 200 1-1. These are absolutely entertainment bets, right? These are bets something you want to completely ignore, or chuck some couch change, or if you find $5 while walking through the zoo with your kids or something on the floor, that's the kind of money you want to throw in here. But they're a lot of fun. They usually end up losing in heartbreaking fashion, with BJ's team giving up a late equalizer because even though they were up a man, and completely cratering the parlay. But once every 2 seasons they hit, so maybe we'll get off on the right foot. And as Anthony noted, match week 1 usually pretty good for underdogs. So let's see if we can get the right combination here across 2 leagues. You two have underdogs in La Liga. We'll start with BJ. Which one's yours?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be ending this parlay because mine's going to be on Monday afternoon. Relegation 6-pointer. Cadiz against Alaves. Welcome back, Alaves, after 1 season down in the 2nd division. There is no way on earth Cadiz should be an odds-on favorite to win this match. So in our preview pod, I went at length about Cadiz. You can go listen to them, how I'm betting them for relegation. But essentially, they had the worst expected goal differential in La Liga of any of the teams that survived. They were at -20, minus 0.53 per 90. A good exercise out there for teams coming up from the 2nd division in Spain. Historically, since expected goals started widely being tracked in the 2018-19 season, teams coming up from the 2nd division in their first season in La Liga see a 27% decrease in their expected goals for and a 17% increase in their expected goals allowed. So essentially a 44% decrease in their expected goal differential. Alaves was only a plus 0.9 XG differential per 90 minutes. So they would be projected right around where Cadiz is going into the season. And then if you look at transfermarket.com, these two teams are very similar in terms of their total squad value. And Cadiz is losing their best attacking player. Theo Bongdanga is off to Russia to play for Spartak Moscow. He led them with 4 goals last season, and has been their best is their best offensive threat.
So for a team like that Cadiz, production.
Yeah. And so if Cadiz can't stop anybody defensively, they're bottom 5 defense, can't average over 1 non-penalty expected goal. There's absolutely no reason why they should be an odds-on favorite. So welcome back, Deportivo Alaves, plus 285.
Burnley. I got to do it. So BJ's going on a Monday match. I'm going Friday. We'll see if this thing's got legs pretty quickly here on the weekend. It's the spot. It's match week 1. City coming off the treble. Burnley coming back up from the championship. Some exciting new investors. A new ethos around the club since Vincent Kompany took over. Are they going to try to play City off the park? I hope not. But it seems like that's what they're going to try to do. It probably won't work. But the number is just way too high for the situation, the build-up, the spectacle at Turf Moor. Can Pep do it on a cold, rainy night in August at Turf Moor? I don't think so. Give me Burnley. Plus 900. It's high as plus 900.
Bilbao for me.
Perfect.
They've profiled well as an underdog. They're elite defensively. They have consistent and returning production in their attack. Real Madrid without Benzema, unless they find a striker replacement, just isn't as good. And they're kind of run into a bit of a Bayern problem, similar to losing Lewandowski. Like losing Benzema and just not replacing him is going to be a problem. So I'm going to take Bilbao at home plus 240 in that match.
Another thing about Bilbao is because of the way their club is set up, like there is really no ever transition period, right? Like it's just
They are what they are.
Yeah, they are. They are every season. They just step out. It's like it's just been one long season since the club was formed. That parlay, Bilbao, Alaves, and Burnley, an entire weekend's worth of parlay for you, 130 to 1. Should it cash, which it will. And that's how we'll start the season. All right, before we get out of here, we will wrap things up like we do every episode with our favorite Premier League bets. Anthony always logs these into our Wondergoal account on the Action Network app. So be sure to download the app. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast. If you're new, welcome aboard. This is basically what we do, with the exception of we will also talk Serie A and Bundesliga when they come back in the same way we talked about Liga and La Liga. But we always close every episode looking ahead to the weekend with our favorite bets for the Premier League. And Anthony, you can go first this time around.
Yeah, the biggest difference between my projections and the upcoming season on like teams is Brighton. I'm much higher than the market on Brighton. I think that the market priced Brighton as this elite team in the second half of the season. They were the most profitable team. They had the most CLV by the end of the season too. And the market has just kind of baked in some regression here, and I don't really agree with it. They lose McAllister, but they keep the majority of that squad together so far. Evan Ferguson, his minutes and Matoma's minutes, like all of what made them so dominant the second half of the season is kind of back this year. The De Zerbi patterns that he's so effective at drilling. There's a lot to like with this team. Luton Town, there will be spots to bet them. I don't think a road dog in the first round of matches is one of them. So I'm going to take Brighton, lay the goal and a half. Not something I do often, but think that the spread should be closer to 2.
I'm going to take Bournemouth. They're plus 170 at home against West Ham. I think right now when we're looking at these teams in a vacuum going into match week 1, don't really think there's much of a difference between Bournemouth and West Ham. We like the ceiling for Bournemouth as a podcast under Iraola. This team showed some serious gumption down the stretch last year. When you look at the teams that were in the relegation fight, like they were one of the most impressive post-World Cup. So the Cherries started to build something last year. It should only go in the right direction with one of the kind of more up-and-coming managers across all of Europe. So I'm going to take the Cherries against a West Ham team where it's kind of the opposite. It's like we've probably seen the peak of this version of West Ham. Looks like it's all going in one direction. They are the favorite on the road just based on what we saw last year and kind of pedigree. I think if you covered up the names here, you wouldn't make much sense to make West Ham a road favorite. So I'll take Bournemouth plus 170. That's my favorite bet for the weekend. I was pretty close to picking your Spurs, Anthony, but I'll go with Bournemouth instead. BJ, what about you?
Newcastle minus 135 at home against Aston Villa. Aston Villa was really good under Unai Emery last season. They charged up the table. Since November 1st, when he took over, they have a plus 14 actual goal differential, but they drastically overperformed because their expected goal differential was only plus 0.4. And like I already mentioned, the only way that Unai Emery is going to get the best characteristics of all three of his center backs is to play them all at once on the pitch. And he's never played 3 center backs ever in his entire career. So going through that transitional period, trying to be a team that predominantly builds out of the back against the most physical team in the Premier League in Newcastle, that is a top 5 pressing team that really beats you up if you try to build out against them. It's a really, really dangerous game to play, especially on the road at St. James Park, where Newcastle was awesome last season, had a plus 1.46 expected goal differential per 90 minutes. And Aston Villa will be without 2 key players, Alex Moreno and Jacob Ramsey. So I think this is a really, really good spot. And honestly, a cheap price here on Newcastle at home. I have them projected at minus 170. So decent value on them at minus 135.
All right, gentlemen, that's it. That's match week 1 in the books. We're off and running here. Like I said, be sure to listen to our season preview pods on this channel. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors, Bet365. For BJ Cunningham, I'm Anthony. For BJ Cunningham and Anthony DeBundo, I'm Michael Leboff. Here's the starting this 2023-2024 Premier League season on the right foot. Perhaps a 130 to 1 parlay in our pocket. Good luck this weekend.